Before I became a sewing teacher, I was a school teacher. In those days, I told my students that repeating their lessons was a sure way to achieve beautiful results on their test. Repetition ensures beautiful results in sewing too. Continuous embroidery on a christening gown border, for example, is just breathtaking. Repetitive stitching makes beautiful quilting patterns and whimsical flouncing ruffles. Even the most delicate hand embroidery is achieved by repeating stitches to form a pattern. Thank you for coming to my sewing room today. We are going to have a lot of fun. You are going to love this dress. It is beautiful. I want to show you some techniques. This looks as if it is a round yoke, doesn't it? It isn't. It's a kind of an easy round yoke. Let me pull the lace back. It's actually a square yoke dress with the lace shaping to make it look like a round yoke and then the edging gathered around. That's the easy way of making a round yoke. The dress fabric is this exquisite handkerchief linen. The top fancy band has entredot and laces and entredot. This is absolutely out of this world. Do you see this embroidery? Let me show you a little secret. This is one little bitty small embroidery actually that came from a museum in England, which has been put together and continuously stitched across the border. Now another fancy band with lace and all the beautiful goodies. Oh, but look at the bottom, the hem. This is a scalloped edge, and once again, that one tiny little embroidery from a museum in England, which has been stitched all the way across, and the big secret is, you see this perfect scalloped bottom? That was done in an embroidery machine also, and it is perfect. Let's have a little quick overview of this continuous embroidery. Now, you're going to have a header fabric. This pink is the header fabric, so you can start right at the very edge of your dress fabric. You have to go into your machine and line all of these up. So as long as the machine will let you, and then there are some magic little marks here that show you exactly where to line it up. Now that beautiful border, all done in the embroidery machine. Get the scallops built in. Get the scallops that go all the way around the skirt, of course. Cut away the bottom. Here are the scallops. Turn it right side out, and you have a magnificent, magnificent scalloped hem. I am so pleased to have as my guest today my very dear friend Pam Mahshie. Pam is Ambassador of Education for Baby Lock USA. Pam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martha.
And thank you for that beautiful dress.
You're so very welcome. It was my pleasure to do it. And let's share with the those viewers how we actually did that continuous embroidery. As you mentioned, we do have the header fabric that we place on the very top, and this of course is going to be removed when we finish our continuous embroidery. It's essential that when you start doing a design for continuous embroidery that you mark the very center of your fabric, the entire length of the strip of fabric that we're going to be using. I did place a piece of water-soluble mesh stabilizer below so that as we stitch, we can stitch the entire design with beautiful results, but then not have to worry about peeling out any of that stabilizer from the back side. Now, as you mentioned, Martha, the machine, we did bring in one very small motif. It's a single motif, and with my machine, we bring it into the continuous embroidery function, and what that will allow us to do is to bring in as many designs that will fill our largest frame, or the frame we're going to be working with. We want to use the largest so we don't have to rehoop as many times. The machine also is so smart that it's going to be placing alignment marks right where our needle needs to drop down. Now the viewers, as you look at this, might wonder, well, looking at it, it's not at the end of my design. But again, because my machine is so smart, it knows that the design sweeps up to the side, and I need to make sure that my design aligns the left, the center, and the left side of the design. Aligning at those 3 points, make sure that our design stays continuously stitching straight. If we don't drop our needle at each one of those 3 points, we might end up with a wedge or a gap in part of our design. So continuously stitch, unhoop our fabric, and I do use the grid. Many times we don't know what the grid is for when we pull the machine out of the box, but simply lay the grid into the hoop, and as you rehoop your fabric, you're assured to align your fabric again straight in the machine or in the hoop. So let me show you then on those scallops. This is another hoop that we're going to be working with when we do the scallops. This is a great hoop because when we hoop, aligning the edge of our fabric, we can leave the hoop on the machine. So let me just slide this onto the machine and show you how this is going to work. Slide the hoop on, and notice I don't have any stabilizer when I do this type of continuous embroidery. There are markings that are on the frame, and these marks, I'm simply going to snap open the frame. Very simple.
Okay.
Slide my fabric up, align it with the marks in the back, snap it in place, pull my fabric so that it's taut, and snap it in place again. Touch go, and it stitches out each one of those little scallops.
Completely fascinating, Pam.
And then we trim it away.
And they have such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful heirloom look, and the scallops are just perfect.
Perfect, perfect.
Thank
without
you
having to
so
stitch
very much. And now Pam has some sewing inspirations to share with you. Pam, this is a beautiful wall hanging. Tell us about these leaves.
Well, these leaves are actually created with raw fibers and the embellisher using the water soluble mesh stabilizer. You just punch all types of fibers together, creating the fabric, and then cut them out to create these beautiful leaves.
Absolutely beautiful. Oh, this dress again. My goodness. Oh, absolutely out of this world.
And you know, what I love doing most about this is the accuracy in the embroidery and just again, continuously embroidering it. And the thread that I used is not the traditional rayon embroidery, machine embroidery thread. I used a 50 weight cotton thread, and this just kind of blends much more with the linen.
With the linen, oh my goodness, that is so beautiful. This is fascinating. I think you said this was continuous also?
Correct. This is continuous embroidery, both widthwise and lengthwise, and it continually filled the fabric, and then we cut out the fabric to create the garment using a quilting motif. And as you can see, it's quilted then through both sides.
Absolutely beautiful. Sweet little doll dress.
A little doll dress. And this is a great little doll dress. And we've actually want to just focus up here in the middle. This is a texture magic technique. And what we're going to be doing is just stitching all different types of decorative stitches, or any decorative stitch. Hit the fabric with the iron, and it puffs up the fabric.
How sweet. And you know what? I love machine embroidery on sweaters. I think you said there's a stabilizer trick on this one to have perfect machine embroidery on a sweater.
You want to, when you stitch with doing machine embroidery on a sweater and on a knit especially, using a stabilizer both on the top as well as on the underside. And by using a press away stabilizer on the top, you don't have to worry about trying to peel out different stabilizers. And the stabilizer needs to remain with the fabric because it is a knit.
Thank you so much, Pam. And now Pam has a wonderful, so quick, so easy project to share with you. Pam, that is the cutest bag.
Well, and you know, Martha, what I did is I used the extra lace that I had from my christening gown, and I incorporated in to make this great little bag. So you could make the bag coordinated to put all of your little goodies when you're going off to the church for the christening. Perfect. And you could add some little colors if you wanted to for coordination. And the thread that I used is actually a very thick rayon thread, and I placed that in the chain looper on my serger. And when I stitched it using the chain stitch, the wide cover stitch is how I created the decorative technique on the outside edge. And I did actually stitch through multiple layers of fabric, so I'm going to show you that in just a minute. And then we serged the layers together to create the inset, or using that inset from our christening dress, and layered another piece of fabric behind it just to give it a little bit of contrast. So then let's take a quick little peek at how this was done. First thing that we're going to be doing is you can make this bag any size you want, depending upon the amount of leftover fabric or lace or trim that you might have. So what I've done is I've just taken my piece of fabric and I have measured double the size that my finished piece is going to be. And I just simply drew 2 lines on the wrong side, because when we stitch using a cover stitch and the decorative thread, that's going to be appearing on the right side of our fabric. All right. Then when we stitch, we're going to be simply again stitching on the wrong side, so then when you turn it over, it magically appears your decorative stitching on the right side. Here I've stitched 2 different stitch lengths also to show you that we can, if you shorten your stitch length, you can create a much more dense look to your stitch, and that decorative thread makes it very nice and shiny. Once you have your decorative lines of stitching, here's where I've just simply layered my gingham fabric underneath my piece of trim, and as you can see here, this is a piece that's been left, and we simply place then right sides together, stitch our lines on both sides with a overlock stitch, and that's what creates our center panel in the middle. And then we create and cut the bag to our size and add our zipper at the top with a lining, and we're done. Simple as that.
Pam, that is absolutely the best way of using a few leftover scraps I've ever seen. And you know what? You might even make a few leftover inches to make a beautiful bag like that. That would be a nice thing to store the booties and maybe beauty pins and a few little mementos of the day.
That's right.
Pam, thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you here. And now I have a segment for you called And Sew On. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today, Kari Mecca. Kari is the owner and designer of Carry Me Away. She's the author of 4 books, a frequent contributor to So Beautiful magazine, and a teacher at the Martha Pullen School of Art Fashion. Kari, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Martha.
Adorable dress. Oh, every little inch of it is embellished. Tell us about this.
We have a woven yoke. It's spaghetti and lace combined, which on an organdy bodice, so you can see through.
Spaghetti bias. We better tell them.
Yes,
just spaghetti.
A spaghetti bias, and we have angel sleeves that are disconnected of sorts. It has I call them halo sleeves because they just kind of curl around.
Oh, how cute. And this adorable ruffle skirt.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, are the flounce ruffles. And now I say flounce ruffles, but it adds fullness and it is a ruffle, but no gathering, which is the best part. There's circles of fabric that we're going to apply to our skirt of our top. Now, you could apply these to actually any pattern or any straight skirt, and I'm going to show you right now.
Okay.
So first off, we need to make our pattern. So I have a circle drawing tool, and we're going to make our pattern, and actually our pattern is a donut shape. So we'll draw. Now,
well, that was easy enough,
isn't it? Now there's a whole bunch of math involved, but typically your pattern is going to tell you. Then we'll come out. This is the length of our ruffle. So let's say, I don't know, that's about 3 inches, and we'll draw around. So pattern making can be this simple. And once we have our pattern, we'll cut that out and we'll cut our fabric. So here's our donut, and I want to show you. Now this is a fairly small circle, and this is what it's going to do when you sew it on straight. See the ruffles? Because we'll uncurve our center circle. Now this is a larger circle and this is a smaller circle. So smaller circles get you more fullness, larger circles, it's just a softer finish. So from there, we're going to go ahead and use our bias binding tool, And I'm going to finish the edge again with bias. Pre-cut bias is the easiest. I have the 1/2 inch tool, which makes a 1/4 inch finished bias. And we need our strip cut twice as wide as the tool. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just finish the top edge of our circle. I don't trim anything away. I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance is what I'm using. And I go ahead and stay stitch because these are all cut on the bias. They stretch. So you need to be careful and not stretch it as you're sewing. Now, this is the bottom of my top, let's say. Here's my hem, and I just put in a 1/4 inch rolled hem. And there's my first line of attachment. Now let's say my ruffle is 3 inches long, so I want a 2.5 inch line because you need them to overlap. You don't want to see the attachment seam, so I'll just measure up, and for every ruffle I want to add, I'll draw a line. Now we're working in the round. We have donut shaped ruffles or flounces. So we're going to go ahead, and our skirt is in the round as well. We've done our side seams, it's hemmed, and we're going to go ahead and add this. It's also a great way to, if you have extra fabric, to add length to a garment. So if it turns out a little short or you need just a little bit more, it's the perfect solution. We're going to go ahead and we'll turn under our edge. That's why we finished it. We're just going to turn it under, and we're going to go ahead and pin it right along our seam line. And then I'm going to go ahead and just take it to the sewing machine and just top stitch. And we're finished. We're always working from the right side. We can see exactly what's going on, and it's very easy to do. Now from there, here is a sample with multiple ruffles. Again, I've pinned it, and I pinned it to my line, and you can see that all of our ruffles overlap about 1/2 inch. So that's how easy it is. If your flounce doesn't fit exactly, just go ahead and tug on that stay stitch line, and that's all the gathering you have to do. No double rows of gathering. It's so easy to do, and I hope you like it.
This, I'm going to let you put that over. This is so sweet. And the little sleeves, you said you did a little gather on the little sleeves. Is that correct?
I went ahead and folded my circle in half.
Okay, okay.
So it's doubled. And then I just ran an elastic casing at the top, and then I attached it just at the ends, and so it just hangs over the shoulder, the curve of the shoulder. It's really very cute. And then added, of course, some purchased flowers that were already made, but you know, we styled them up a little bit so they look cute. You know, flat flowers aren't great.
Well, that is wonderful. Thank you so much, Kari.
Thank you, Martha.
And now I have some hand embroidery to share with you. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today my very dear friend Wendy Schoen. Wendy is the designer of Petite Pochette Patterns. She's the author of 5 books, a regular contributor to So Beautiful magazine, and a teacher at the Martha Pullen School of Art Fashion. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Martha. I have something unusual to show you today. If you look at this sewing bag, you'll see this little motif here, and look really far down and you'll see this little green leaf. Now that little green leaf is called the fishbone stitch, but sometimes we call it the satin leaf, and that's because it actually looks like it was satin stitched, but it wasn't. So let me show you how much easier it is. I'm going to move this out of the way so we can get started. Now, I've brought with you, today I brought a sample of a leaf, or a drawing of a leaf rather, and I am going to be working this in an embroidery hoop. I'm going to tie on with using a waist knot. Remember, we're going to be cutting the waist knot off after, so it doesn't really matter where you place it. But more importantly, you want to bring your tie-on stitches kind of close to the vein. The closer to the vein, the better, because that's where the stitches will be the most intense or the most dense. Oops, let's see if I can get that out. There we go. Now, the two little back stitches are going to be enough to hold the thread in place. And remember, whenever you have an open space like this, that's the perfect place to tie on. Now, first thing you want to do is emerge at the tip or the point of the leaf. And all leaves are not created equally, so you just need to make a judgment call on that. Now, the first stitch is going to be placed along the center vein, about 1/3 of the way up. You don't want to make it too short because you'll see what happens with the angle of the stitch right after we make the next stitch. Okay, so I'm emerging on the outer edge of the leaf, and it doesn't matter which side you choose because we're going to alternate those sides. In this case, I've come out on the right. And it's about just a small space away from the first point. Now I'm going to go back into the center vein and stitch just slightly above the first stitch. Now the next stitch is going to emerge on the edge of the leaf, but on the other side. Remember, we're going to alternate sides. Come out right on the line, just like that, and then go back to the center. Now, every time you take a stitch, you're going to go a little bit farther up the center on the vein, and you're going to, of course, you're going to alternate each side. But each side, the stitch, you take a stitch, you're going to space it out just slightly and try to hold a nice angle in the stitch. Remember when I said you want to take your stitch in the center vein and place it approximately 1/3 of the way down? Well, if you place it too far down, you would lose the angle of your stitches very quickly, and then it begins to look sort of flat. You want to keep it at this nice angle. Continue stitching until you reach the top of the vein. Now, when you reach the top of the vein, I'm going to show you with the angle of this needle what's going to happen. The stitches on the edges are going to be at this approximately this angle. So it's going to leave you with an open space here. So let me show you the next hoop so we can talk about that. All right, so this is basically what the leaf will look like when you, hopefully, when you get to the top. What I have tried to do is hold my angle so that it doesn't move too much, meaning I don't want it to start to flatten out like this. And I have been very careful to take my stitches right along the center vein. Now, when you get to the top, you want to start faking your stitches. In other words, I don't want to go to the center vein. I want to go to the edge of the leaf here. You can continue alternating from side to side until you fill in that space. So basically you're doing, for lack of better words, faux stitches or faux crossover stitches or straight stitches. So your leaf gets the impression of a satin stitch without all the labor of padding it or having to pay attention to your edges, and you wind up with a nice shape. And this little leaf can be as large as you want it to be or as small as you want it to be. It's very, very useful stitch. Now I'm going to turn this around so I can show you how to tie off. When you look at the back, you'll see it's just full of stitches or straight stitches. What you need to do is just pick up a little bit of the fabric. You don't want to stitch all the way to the front. I'm just going to place a little back stitch right here, and then usually I take the thread down and bring it underneath the stitches on the back, and that's all there is to it, Martha.
Beautiful, beautiful. And now I'd like to invite you to join me to see a piece from my vintage collection. This long baby dress has some of the most wonderful features. As you can see, it's a scoop neck. Let me tell you something interesting. Scoop neck dresses very rarely had a puff sleeve, and I think this is the original sleeve. So this mother was very, very creative. She was way ahead of her time with this era, which was mid-1800s, putting in a puff sleeve. The other detail that I love so much, and you know how much I love puffing, the two little puffing strips that come down the front to join onto the little waistband. I just think those are really sweet details. Now the skirt, the very long skirt, is really very simple. And this dress, this skirt might not have been original to this dress. I really don't know, but the skirt is a little bit different from the top, so I think maybe it isn't. Now the beautiful tucks, wide tucks, narrow tucks, wide tucks, narrow tucks, and then a simple hem. What a magnificent dress. Thank you for joining me today. Won't you come back next time?